Thank you very much for staying on the marketplace. Welcome back. Now, inflation for the month of February 2018 experienced an increase to record 10.6% as compared with the rate for January. The rate indicates prices of goods and services went up year on year between the same period, February 2017 and February 2018. According to the Ghana Statistical Service, the Upper West, Brahafo, Greater Accra and the Ashanti regions recorded rates higher than the national average. Government statistician Ban Wadje has been explaining to journalists at a press conference on the factors leading to the increment.
Slight uptick in the inflation rate from 10.3 in January to 10.6 in February was due to the rise in the inflation rates for certain subgroups and groups by the COECOP classification. We have transport, which we mentioned that inflation went up. It went up by about 1%. We have the communication group. Again, inflation went up in this group. We have education, we have housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels, all recording increases in the inflation rate. And we also had the inflation rates in the food and non-alcoholic beverage group also going up. We also recorded a rise in inflation for the health group as well as for miscellaneous goods and services. So all these items recorded increases in their inflation, and this pushed up the overall inflation rate to 10.6%. But having said that, the underlying cause was due mainly to one, base drift effects, and the slight increases that were recorded in the prices for fuel in February. These also contributed to the rise in inflation that we are observing for February 2018.
Now, moving on, Chairman of the Parliament's Finance Committee, Dr. Mark Asibe Yeboah, is insisting that measures being implemented by government would help contain the debt stock from reaching threatening levels. This follows projections by the economic policy think tank Institute for Fiscal Studies that the public debt would exceed 150 billion cedis by the end of the year, raising concerns about the effectiveness of current policies by government. But Dr. Asibe tells Joy Business the country's debt situation may not worsen as being projected by economic policy think tanks.
The debt builds up. You can't disentangle one government's debt from the other. These build up. And this is debt that has built up over the years. There's a threshold, 70%, beyond which your debt becomes unsustainable. We've crossed that threshold. So how do we make our debt sustainable? How do we bring debt levels down? And they have prescribed some solutions. Some of them we already know, like debt reprofiling, which is going on, a borrowing plan which the government has put in place, a good mix between foreign debt and domestic, so that exchange rate pressures don't come to bear when foreigners repatriate their funds. So we have to take the discussions one notch.
What of the audit commission? I mean, the debt audit commission that he.
I think the Auditor General does this. Recently, we got a saving of 5.4 billion. The Auditor General made a savings of 5.4 billion when he audited claims submitted to the government. So we don't need another bureaucracy for that, but the Auditor General can help him. That's light.
Okay. Look, he also mentioned the fact that some of the debt, the interest on the debt, we need to manage them well.
Yeah. The interest rates have been very high on some of the commercial loans. So he mentioned concessionality. There's a certain limit. If the concessionality element is above 35%, then you want to go for such debt. Otherwise, you stay away from debt, which is very expensive.
This is the Marketplace live on Joy News. Now, let's move on to another story making headlines. Now, the Supreme Court has dismissed a review application that sought to compel NIB to pay some 60 million Ghana cedis judgment debt. Now, George Rafi has been following on this particular development. He's joining right here in the studio as usual. George, welcome now. Give me a background to this.
So somewhere around in 2013, the bank actually guaranteed a facility for a certain company to bring in some imports. It looks like that company defaulted in making those payments, and then there were issues about how that money could be paid back. That money judgment debt was in tune to about $60 million actually. And when the case went to court back and forth, actually Dominion Corporate Trustees won the case at the lower court, but NIB thought that the issues were not really done well. So the issue went again up to court, appealed at the court, and the court ruled that decision by the lower court that NIB should pay judgment debt of $60 million should be thrown out, and NIB can't decide not to pay the money. So the Dominion Trustees also took the case again for a review by the Supreme Court.
So what exactly happened in court today?
Today, 7 justices, when they sat on the case to review that earlier rule, and argued that what Dominion Corporate Trustees have brought forward, they don't meet the conditions that should warrant a review of that matter. So they cannot set aside that earlier ruling that threw out, or that sought to actually throw out a request forcing NIB to pay that $60 million. Some people have argued that if NIB had lost the case, then that could have led to its collapse. To pay that amount of money out to Dominion Corporate Trustees, that would have really brought the bank on its knees.
So currently, what are some of the stakeholders? How have they been responding to
Well,
this?
it's been difficult. Most of them are quite tight-lipped, but again, engaging some of the lawyers. The argument now is that, listen, we have the international courts to explore. We are an international company. Maybe we can go to international level to get a very good ruling on this particular issue if we had lost the case in Ghana.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yafe.
Some more updates on this.
Thank you.
And that was George Yafe bringing us update on the Supreme Court's ruling on the case involving NIB Bank and another party. Now let's turn our attention to the oil and gas sector. And the Ghana Standards Authority says it has secured funding to aid the installation of new flow meters on all the FPSOs on the country's oil fields. This is to ensure the country is able to gauge actual levels of crude exported out of the country. Chief Executive of the Ghana Standards Authority, Professor Alex Dodu, disclosed this when he spoke in an interview with Udilia Ntiamoa.
So we have been pumping oil without really having a good estimation. What has happened is that Parliament last November approved for us now to have the flow meters. It's going to take 18 months to 24 months to install. As of this week, the Central Tender Review Board has given us approval to now have the contractor who is going to get going. And Parliament approved 50 million out of 250 million for us. So I would say that we have never been there. Parliament has taken it seriously. They have given us the money. Indeed, we have been sent a message to come for the first quarter of that 250 million. So it is work in progress, which has started. There are tangibles. The group which won the tender, now I think we can say it is called OGC. It's a Dutch technical group. That happened way back into 2016, but there were issues. But as we speak now, just this Monday, we have a letter from the Central Tender Review Board that engaged them, do a request for proposal, and build a rig. So it has started.
And that will mean what? Exactly what is going to happen with your control especially?
So what that is going to mean is that now any fuel coming out of the FPSOs, we'll know what is coming, both the quantity and the quality. So that will then feed into GRA. Then GRA will now know exactly how much we are getting. Because now the situation basically is that the oil companies tell you what they have taken, and they pay tax on that. Shall we say that it's not satisfactory as a country? And now that we are also expanding and we are trying to become a petroleum economy, it's not going to work. So even though GSA is taking the lead, Ghana Revenue Authority will be there. And indeed, the country will not know, but GRA wanted to go ahead with just simple meters. And again, Ministry of Finance said, no. GSA is trying to do something more comprehensive. Why don't you become part of that project team? So now that Parliament on its own has actually given us some kickstart by providing about a quarter of the money. There have been enough investors who were interested in funding it, but there was ambivalence. Now government has been very clear. Technical consultant is there. It should take 2 years, but we believe that it probably might finish earlier than the 2 years. I'm happy to say that it has started. This has been talked about for the past 5 years, and it's only taken Parliament's intervention in November to say that you are going to have that money and you are going to do it. And it is part of the work plan for the Ministry of Trade. So indeed, sometime next week, you would see an advert that we are saying that we want experts in petroleum sector to help in joining the GSA to have what we call the standards for the hydrocarbon metering. We had the text long ago, just waiting for this approval, because it's in 4 phases. One, we're going to set up what is the standard we are going to use, because we, the GSA, will take custody of the oil, as we should for other natural resources, on behalf of the country till it's exported. So we know what was taken from our F or our C, and then tell government that we took 100, and the government takes its tax before it's exported. Now, even with the gold, as you know, the big guys, nobody takes custody. They export and tell us what they have exported. And that is where the issue has been that, okay, they tell you that it's X kilogram, and you have to believe it. You have to deal with trust. But business is not trust. It's about verifying. So we hear Precious Minerals saying they are going to build the labs. We hope it happens quickly. In the interim, should we be asked to do some of these activities on behalf of them for the gold, we'll do it because we have a gold lab. For the oil, we are putting up a lab. We have been given the consultants. We don't foresee funding to be an issue. And it's something that cannot even be done in secret, because of the advert to have the experts to join the technical committee. Once the standards are done, we should take between 3 to 6 months to be published. We are putting up the labs and everything in Takoradi, because that's where the oil are. Because this same facility will be servicing Atuabo and other places. So as we speak, we are actually running, because all these things must happen in parallel. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 are just going at the same time, now that we have approval from the Ministry of Finance.
The money hasn't been released yet?
We have received a message from the Ministry of Finance that 11 million out of the 50 million promised by government of Ghana is available, and we should submit our requests, which we have actually sent to the Ministry of Trade.
Now moving to the downstream sector of the oil and gas industry, the bulk oil storage and transportation company BOST yesterday, as part of its defense against claims by COPEC, said it did no wrong to sell a parcel of fuel to an unlicensed foreign company, BB Energy. BOST also stated that it could not have continued to store the amount of fuel in question in its tanks, as this could affect or could have affected the value of the oil. Now, we want to get some reaction and some more clarification on these assertions from energy think tank IES. But first, let's recap what exactly BOST officials are saying.
There is another allegation he raised that the company was unlicensed. Before I answer that, let me ask you, if any of you buy product to Côte d'Ivoire, to any refinery, anywhere, that you want to refine your products, do you need a license of that country before you can refine your products? I don't think you do. If you buy a product and send it to Côte d'Ivoire to go and refine the product in their refinery, you don't need to register there before you can get your product refined. Tor can have crude from anywhere and they'll refine. Any supplier who will bring crude to Tor doesn't need a license in Ghana before he can get his product refined at all. So that is a total display of ignorance in the industry.
All right, so you heard what exactly BOST said in defense of the claims leveled against it by COPEC. But currently we have on the line Richmond Roxon. He is with the energy think tank IES, and he will put this particular issue into perspective, whether or not BOST was required by law to sell was required or could sell its amount of oil to any company it desires to trade with currently. Now, Roxon, welcome to the marketplace.
Thank you very much.
So what exactly does the law says about trading in oil?
Good afternoon to your cherished viewers. It's basic that before any company trade, the company should have the requisite license from the National Petroleum Authority. So we find it quite interesting and strange that BOST will assert that they can trade with any company that they want at any point in time. At least the regulator in the industry is National Petroleum Authority. So if anything, you should be able to have a list of certified companies or companies in good standards where you can trade with them. So would have been easier if they had written to NPA for NPA to furnish them with the details whether or not these companies have been registered before trading with them. But to say that you have done your trading with them, if there are regulatory issues, it's the NPA that must handle it, when you could have just written to NPA, get their feedback before you trade, we find it quite unfortunate. But definitely you should be able to have a license before you can trade whatever category you decide to trade in.
Now, he also mentioned the reverse. For instance, a company in Cote d'Ivoire selling crude to Ghana to trade. Does that company require a law to do that?
Of course. Like I mentioned, you need to be licensed. You can't just come to Ghana and trade. You need to be licensed. There are various categories, various kinds of businesses. You have oil marketing companies, you have oil trading companies, you have BDC, you have various segments. So definitely you should be able to seek the authority or the view of at least the National Petroleum Authority before some of these decisions can be made. I don't think that any company can just trade on the local market without the requisite license that you need.
So in effect, that assertion is erroneous?
No, it can't be accurate. It can't be accurate. Right. That assertion is inaccurate.
All right, now
we are hoping that very soon NPA will be able to speak up about this.
All right. Okay. Now, secondly, it also questioned the fact that, you know, continuing to store the amount of fuel in the tanks of Tor could affect the value eventually. Is that also, true?
So that's also not accurate. Crude oil can be stored for a very long period of time. It can be stored for a very long period of time. You see, there's a difference between crude oil and finished product. Finished product is relatively difficult to store for a very long time because of the nature or its composition. But crude oil is heavier and can be stored for a very long time. There are some countries that have stored crude for several decades and they still have it. So 10 months is just not enough period to say that it's going to affect the value of crude oil. 10 months is a bit too small to assess that the crude oil would have lost its value for you to sell at a discount.
Now, do you think this has been going on for long, or indeed this is the first of its kind happening?
We don't want to speculate. These issues have been at since September last year. If you remember, Boss declared profit last year in September, and he said that this practice of declaring profit when the crude has been in existence for a while for price to just go up, sell it, and declare that there's been profit is inaccurate, and that we expected the business to be able to do proper trading if you really wanted to make profit. So yes, we can't confirm or deny whether or not it's the first or if it's been happening for a long time, but it has come to our notice as well, and it will be important for the ministry responsible for energy to take particular interest in this, to investigate it at the end of the day, to bring this issue to a finality rather than the trading or the back and forth that is going on.
Now, lastly, before you go, since Boss purchased this crude for Tor to refine, do you think Tor could have, played any role in this particular transaction?
Oh yes, once Tor is refining, the basis on which Tor refine the product, I'm sure will be on tolling basis, and ordinarily you are charged $5, and from what we gather, Tor charged $3.5. That's quite strange, because if normally you charge $5 and you are charging $3.5, that's relatively different from what you do in the ordinary course of business. So that will also be important to have some clarity on the matter, whether or not there were several reasons why the Tema Oil Refinery decided to discount, but ordinarily around $5 for toll.
All right. Now, many thanks for your time. Richmond Roxon is the principal researcher of the Institute of Energy Security. He's been adding his voice to the developing issue of shady oil seal in Bost. Now, away from that, Cocoa Board has dismissed suggestions it may struggle to fully pay back the $1.3 billion loan it secured for cocoa beans purchases this year. It says payment has already started a month ahead of schedule. A Bloomberg report had earlier quoted the chief executive of Cocoa Board, Joseph Boain Edu, as saying the country was unlikely to meet its production targets for the year, making it difficult to also pay back its lenders. However, Office Manager of CEO of Cocoa Board, Fifi Boafo, says there are efforts underway to meet this year's targets and assures there is no cause for worry.
Able to repay. If you recollect, last year we were even able to pay a month before the stipulated period we were supposed to repay the facility. And from all indication and from data available from cocoa we've taken delivery of at this point in time, there is no indication to suggest whatsoever that we will not be able to repay the facility. So sure, we are on course and we are on target.
Now, moving away from the repayment itself, what about the production target? Are we able to meet the target? What is the plan?
You know, we projected to produce 850,000 metric tons this year. What has happened generally is that cocoa production worldwide is believed to be on a decline this year. But that's notwithstanding, we do not have a difficulty meeting our set target. So yes, there might be reason for people to be suspicious of what is happening. For example, the rains were not on time as expected and other reasons. But if you also realize, there have been a number of interventions aimed at ensuring that we are able to boost our production. So that is certainly something that will cushion, if any, shortfall. So meeting our target is not a problem.
So if I may ask, how much have you paid so far out of it?
No, you see, what happens is that we start paying from February. And February, we just started March. So that's exactly what we've done. And we are on target. We are on point to deliver just as we've contracted to do.
All right, now, and in an industry-related issue, the state has filed a case against Dr. Stephen Kwabena Opuni, a former chief executive officer of the Ghana Cocoa Board. A total of 27 charges has been filed against Mr. Opuni and one Seydou Agongo. The report said the case will be called on Friday, March 23, 2018. Now, you've got to have great skills to be able to paint a portrait in less than 10 minutes. That's just one of the skills artist Patrick William Dodu is gifted with, and he is making good use of it. As we put the spotlight on art this month of March on the Joy Business Van, we head to Patrick's studio at Dansoman here in Accra as he opens our eyes to the profession that could make some good returns for investors. Here's an excerpt of a bit of what you see.
He's painted portraits of various notable personalities, but Patrick William Dodu is only just getting started. We are headed to his studio at Dansoman here in Accra. Patrick takes pride in being the fastest live artist in the country. His ability to paint portraits in less than 10 minutes has taken him places. The journey began in Sekondi Takoradi in the western region of Ghana, where Patrick grew up. His story is similar to many other artists who discovered their skill while growing up and stuck to the calling.
Sekondi Takoradi is a place that I feel that played a very huge role on my side, on my life, where the toil through strong artists like Charles Atukobra, late Atukobra, Ricky, Dapo.
All right, so you get a full story of Patrick Dodu's unique artistic impressions on this evening's edition of the Joy Business Van. Comes to you live on Business on Live. My name is Emmanuel Apwaji. That's it for the market. Please have a good afternoon.